one of the things that I don't think I appreciated until watching this with audiences like yourself is like Billie is free in that interview that we do with her at 82 years old. And in a way that when you see her in the 70s, she's much more contained, right? She has a weaker voice. She's more controlled. And just to see like, this is somebody who like not only embraces themselves, but like takes the responsibility of the individual and changes the world around them.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, the life and legacy of tennis star Billie Jean King is examined in directors Liz Garbus and Elizabeth Wolff's documentary, Give Me the Ball. Screened as part of the DGA's documentary series, the film takes a look at world champion tennis trailblazer Billie Jean King and her game-changing impact on culture and sports. Rare archive footage and candid interviews reveal how one woman put changing the world above saving herself. In addition to Give Me the Ball, Garbus's other directorial credits include the documentary features Becoming Cousteau, Bobby Fischer Against the World, and Girlhood, and episodes of the series The Handmaid's Tale. She received a DGA Award nomination for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Documentary for her 2016 film, What Happened, Miss Simone. Wolff's other directorial credits include the upcoming documentary feature The Feminist Tapes and episodes of the series I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Following the documentary series screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Garbus and Wolff spoke with director Ondi Timoner about filming Give Me the Ball. Listen on for their conversation.
You know, it's a privilege for all of us to be here with both of you and to be in your presence after such it's really, I think it's a great film. And I don't say that lightly, you know me. So for me, it's just, there's just so much to ask you about with regards to how you put it together. But let's just start with rolling back. And I do want to hear, Elizabeth, you told me a story during dinner that I want to make sure in terms of how the film impacted before we move on from that. If you can see it, you can be it, right?
I mean, I was saying that we do sit at most of all the screenings we've been going to, and whenever I sit down, like there's always something a problem you're working through in your head, and I sit down and I watch this film, and every time I pick up something new, and in many ways, there's so many lessons that have been sort of woven throughout this film that we got to hear from her. And I mean, I would say, I'm a pretty like half, glass half empty kind of person until I got to spend a year and a half with Billie Jean King. And now I'm a glass half full girl. And I think the story you wanted me to share is that, when you spend time with Billie, and I hope that the film has the same effect, is that you start to ask yourself, like, what would Billie do? Like when you have a problem, when things are happening in your life. And when you follow her example, you feel braver, you feel more connected to the world, you feel like just a better citizen. And when we started filming this project, I was 6 months pregnant, and I went into labor, and I was there at the hospital, and I kind of had this moment of like, what would Billie do? And we had just been filming with her, and she introduces herself to everyone. And so what did I do is I was like, I met every orderly, every nurse. I said, what's your name? Where are you from? Da, 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 da. And suddenly I was like, oh, I'm getting like VIP treatment. Like I gave it to the world and the world is giving it back to me. And the head nurse comes in and says, no one ever introduces themselves and asks for people's names. Like, this is incredible. And I had this like, oh, a little Billie rubbed off on me. And, and I just find that if I can just remember that every morning, it's like become a mantra, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of something else that you guys shared that I'd love you to tell everyone, which is, how did she respond when she first saw the film, and Tell me about that.
They had two responses. I mean, that Billie's book about her life is like 600 pages. Okay. And so there was, and this is something that I've gone through before and that documentary filmmakers know is if there's a living subject that they're always unhappy about what, all the things that are not in there. So there was a lot of, they weren't that psyched, but we got through it. But one of the things that was really, on the other hand, the other side of the coin was really joyful as we went to their apartment to show them the film. And Billie, and it speaks to her how she's present in every moment. Billie was just talking. It was like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. She was talking back to the screen the entire time. She was like, oh, don't hit it like that. Oh, and then he told him, and she'd be like saying what she said on screen. And like, yeah, I really said that. I'm like, I know, because we interviewed you and you said it, and here it is on your TV. It's like, but we have like, I can't wait. One day I'll like edit it together and I'll put it out on social media. But it was like she was having this completely interactive experience, living in every moment. And also the Battle of the Sexes, like she had never seen a ton of the footage that we had in there. So she was watching it as if for the first time and had this kind of experience with it that was fascinating to watch. So, yeah. So, and then now they're happier with the film. They sort of started to understand that 100 minutes was what it was going to be. And that was, we weren't adding. But also, a lot of her notes were about all the people who have helped her along the way who we did not mention. And so we did a couple go back and say it was Harold MacGyver who spent the money to send her to Wilmington. Like there were certain people but it was all about kind of, giving everybody their flowers because, there were a lot of people along
saying
the way.
Hi to everybody in the hospital ward and knowing their names. And she does that, right? And so that's what she did when I saw the premiere at Sundance. She went off about both of you and how incredible you were to work with. And I just want to know how you worked together. So I know a lot of people's names were in the ring to do this. Billie came to really want you to direct this. You wanted Elizabeth, who you've worked with. So give us a little bit of your history of working together and then kind of how you tag teamed to get what we saw there.
Well, Elizabeth, I brought on to a series I made for HBO called I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and hired Elizabeth as a producer and got to know her work and then invited her to direct one of the episodes of that show. 3 of the episodes of that show. that was 8 years ago. So forgive me. But in any case, so that we worked together on that project, and it was a really great experience. And I knew that Elizabeth was working on her own film and had a great interest in the feminist movement, and because we can talk about that, but she's working on a different project about that. And so when this project came to me, I wanted Elizabeth to come along, and so she did happily. And
it's hard to get someone like Billie Jean to who's spoken about the same things so many times. How do you get her to get that emotional and to open up about really uncomfortable things as well? Like eating disorders, or when she was outed, or the things that you don't want to revisit, and you're 83 years old. You don't really want to go back there. How'd you do it?
I mean, you've said it's like a little good cop, bad cop. And, but it's a lot of, Billie is, as you can see, she's very compartmentalized, right? So she's very optimistic and positive, and she's forgiven people, and she's worked through it. So it's a lot of sort of teasing it back and kind of trying to like go back and explain to her what, we want to go back to the sort of the hard stuff, right? And that looks like one interview, but it was shot over many days. And especially with the eating disorder, I think we went back every single time we interviewed her. We were trying to get at that a little bit more. I would go see her like a few days before us filming and sort of explain, okay, it's not just the end of the story, right? We have to understand this and that. And she had written this book, which was like, it was an incredible experience for her. And sometimes I would say, okay, so remember, like you've mentioned it here. Oh, okay, right. I need to go back there, right? And so there was a lot of hard questions and a lot of Liz pushing for many hours in the interview chair, and then us breaking. And, Billie also just so much wanted to talk about everyone else, right? So it was just, but she's also this professional athlete who could go like for hours and hours in an interview, right? And so it was just many hours of talking to her.
How long is this interview? Over many days?
Over
interview?
4 or 5 days. I mean, I think it was easily like over 20 hours of sitting with her. But
yeah, over 4 or 5 days spread over 6 or 9 months, several months.
Yeah.
Clearly my numbers aren't exactly, but it was over about 6 months. So there was time for us to kind of massage and work. But no, she doesn't want to live in painful moments. Like she pushes through them. And that's, I think, how she's been so successful and such a champion, because she's relentlessly, but you have to, it's also a film about liberation, and to experience the joy of liberation, you have to experience the struggle. And so it was about sharing that perspective with her. Like, we are asking you to relive your pain in some ways, but it's for a reason. It's not gratuitous. And I think she would always think, oh, they always want that. They want the salacious. And I was trying to sort of because she's been worked over by the press. So it was about trust at the end of the day, I think. Yeah.
Tell us about your crew, because that reminds me of her telling your DP where to stand at certain points, or just telling him it was backlit and things like that.
We had an incredible crew. Tony Hardman was in LA filming, and Tor Tilo was our DP for the interview and in New York. And Josh Pearson is our editor, Laura Cartman, our composer. So really just a wonderful A-list team. Helen Russell, our archival producer, who really unearthed some extraordinary material. And there's that moment where Billie is in the 80s in her office, and you hear the phone ring and she's with her assistant. That is actually Helen Russell in her first job out of college. And she goes on to become a sports archival producer and worked on our project. So she really knew everything.
And talk about her finding the Serena.
And she found the Serena. So that clip of Serena and Venus as kids, like has never been seen. There had been a photograph in a local newspaper, and she had seen it, and then saw some date. I think it was like in the BBC archive, and suddenly like her brain was like, oh, I think this is the date of the thing. And she scrolled through hours and found this clip. In part, because everyone who's in Billie's orbit just becomes so passionate about wanting to do the best for Billie, but that, I think that motivated a lot of us sort of uncovering so many of these gems. And the Virginia Slims tours, like we were just like cross-referencing local newspapers and local TV listings and trying to find like every little piece of material that you saw there. So
yeah, I don't think we ever think about, I never really thought about the Virginia Slims tour from like a perspective of it being revolutionary. Like I didn't understand
You've come a long way, baby. No, right. It has so many different meanings and feelings.
That I can imagine you have to like dig out. It's probably not ever really been framed up that way that I can think of, really. So your editing, the editor is fantastic. And you've worked with him before, right? The editing is amazing.
Yeah, Josh Pearson edited the film I made, What Happened, Miss Simone, and he edited a film Elizabeth worked on about Bobby Kennedy, and he's a superb collaborator. So
brings me to my next question about you. So you've made some really strong portraits about women, and you're working on something right now that we want to hear about women. But What Happened, Miss Simone, Love, Marilyn, even the film about Gloria Vanderbilt. There's so many films about women. How did you want this one to be? How is this one different? How did you want it to be different? What about those maybe informed this?
I don't think about films as like wanting them to be certain things, but I think that they speak to their moments in different ways. The Nina Simone film came out in 2016, and it was the summer, I believe, or 2015. That was 2015. It was Michael Brown, and we were like working with the footage from the protests that Nina was writing songs about, and that was happening in Missouri, and then we think about making this film today, and we started when Biden was president. It carried through to the current administration, and you think about history repeating itself and her ideas about what it means to kind of carry the torch and, people having to do things over again. And 2026 being about like the sacrifice it takes to make change. And so I think about people and their stories and like how they're speaking to our moments. But that's almost, so I suppose that's a lens I take on them. I take to them.
And that makes sense with this one because it's repeating itself. And so here she is going back to school to finish her degree.
She's finishing her degree. She went through an abortion and pre-Roe v. Wade. We're pre-Roe v. Wade, and it's all, but it's more than that because like I think about it, she doesn't like to get involved in like partisan politics, but it's all about politics because it's all about community,
equality,
but it's so positive, and it's like for me, it's the kind of leadership people are hungry for, which is like the anti-polarization, and I think that it's like there's a goodness there. She really has a California spirit of like can do and optimism and positivity, and it's really a spirit that I think is like a real 2026 thing.
And what I love too about it is it's not villainizing men in this film. Like Bobby Riggs says some outrageous things. He's a bit of a Trump figure in your film. The things out of his mouth are I can't even believe, but she never stoops to that level ever. And she quotes her father at the end about respecting your opponent no matter what.
Well, yeah, and you also see in clips that she is often saying, we never said women were better than men. We draw equal crowds, or, she was friends with Bobby Riggs to his dying day, and and even there's this clip where during the Battle of the Sexes, they ask like, so feminism, is it an important thing to you? And she actually said, she's just, I'm trying to be deliberate when I answer. So I said, the women's movement is important if it stays practical, right? So she doesn't want to say something about women's libs. She's picking her words to be inclusive and to not be partisan. And, this is something that she is doing, knowing her platform and knowing that, she doesn't want to perpetuate, divisive rhetoric, right? She wants to include and change everyone, right? There's a big tent.
Yeah, she always corrects us when we say like equality for women. She's like, no, it's not equality for women.
Yeah.
It's equality. It's equality.
Yeah. Reminds me of the project you're making now and your original interest in it. And it just kind of makes me think about that montage where she is winning and we see the shorts that her mom sewed her, which I thought was beautiful editorial move. And speaking to that, her growing up with not enough money and feeling empathy for her parents and all of that fueling her desire to be number one in the world makes me wonder what got you both into this and what fueled you. It so much of the time it's obstacles and it's something greater than ourselves. And I think that this is a film about Billie Jean King, but there's a bigger movement behind this. So it's two questions in one. What motivated you sort of in your early years and is motivating you now to make a film about the second wave of feminism? Is that what you're making? I'll let you speak to it, describe it better. But yes, and then and this film as well.
I grew up just being a nonfiction kid. I just loved anything about history. And I remember seeing the Eyes on the Prize series when I was, in grade school, and just remember it, just feeling how much archive and bringing history alive could make me understand the world around me and have empathy and, to understand the world. And to your question about this documentary about the women's movement I'm doing, I had very similar questions about sort of why had we made so much progress, but so society hadn't changed enough, that. And I went back to archival research, which I love to do. And I found that in the early 90s, all of these second wave feminist leaders had come together feeling sort of like the backlash of their movement and recorded their history about sort of what went right and what went wrong, and passing on these hard-won lessons to the next generation to carry the torch, much like Billie says in this film, to pass the torch. But these recordings that these women made in the 90s basically sat in boxes and no one paid them any mind until I found them and digitized them. And so we're doing a film really using these women's wisdom that we haven't heeded. And it's very eerie to hear some of the leaders of the women's movement in 91 say, Roe v. Wade is just a court decision. It's going to be overturned any minute, right? And they're saying this 30 years ago. And I think what's so special about this film is just the power of learning from previous generations. And I think in this, it's very easy to discount a previous generation or discount, somebody who's, maybe been at the apex of their career many decades ago. But Billie has an incredible wisdom and knowledge to pass on, and just a beauty and an energy. And one of the things that I don't think I appreciated until watching this with audiences like yourself is Billie is free in that interview that we do with her at 82 years old. And in a way that when you see her in the 70s, she's much more contained, right? She has a weaker voice. She's more controlled. And just to see this is somebody who not only embraces themselves, but takes the responsibility of the individual and, and changes the world around them. I mean, how just makes you want to interview every 82-year-old.
Well, that's the thing. I was talking to my mom about it yesterday on Mother's Day, and just what she was saying, I feel so much freer at this age to say whatever I want and whatever I feel. I said, okay, Mom, but not everything. No, almost everything. Liz, you have directed, as I mentioned in the introduction, so many scripted films and series, well, mostly series, and you're going to do another one this summer. Tell me about being a documentary filmmaker and how you can bring that to scripted, what you bring, what the actors love or what the directors love, what the crew might not love. Tell me all about it.
Well, they're very different mediums, but there's a lot you can pull from your life experience in one into the other. I mean, for instance, I directed on The Handmaid's Tale, and we made this series called All Be Gone in the Dark. And in All Be Gone in the Dark, there were all these survivors of a serial killer and rapist. But by focusing on their experiences and the way that they dealt with trauma, for example, it was something that I could bring, to an actor in The Handmaid's Tale in a dystopian society where women are, habitually raped, et cetera, et cetera. So there are these ways, and people react in surprising ways. I mean, as documentarians, we are students of human behavior, and we can bring a lot, I think, to actors that is incredibly good, fertile material for them. I think as documentary filmmakers, many of us who have worked in both sides have felt this kind of, like a bit of a ball and chain around the size of crews. I mean, both, it's incredible, right? Because you're working with this orchestra of craftspeople who are, each one bringing their A game to create something so beautiful. And you have so many tools and toys and lenses but it's also slow. It's a slow operation. And we're very used to being like, come on, it's happening, roll. And and it's like, how do you kind of take the best of that into the best of that big orchestra? And when that works, it's really sweet.
A lot of improv and shooting rehearsals. And I used to keep a Super 8 camera on my chair. Yeah. Just in case anything happens. You kind of have to keep your own camera.
Yeah, but you got it. But there's you got to respect people's, department. I mean, there's a lot of, there's very different protocols on set.
Absolutely. Yeah. With this film, did you go and interview the other people and then come back to Billie, go out, come back, that kind of thing? So with Elton, was he sort of your way into talking about the really difficult subject of her eating disorder?
Well, no, we did Elton pretty late in the game. It was just this past, that was a year ago, Wimbledon. Yeah, it was Wimbledon. So it was last July.
Yeah, well, we had interviewed her about that, and then we interviewed her after that. And
all of the time.
Yeah. And it always, it was always something that we were trying to unpack. And also other things too, right? Larry, she adores Larry. It was really hard for her to go and talk about, why their relationship wasn't working, or even talking about sort of her journey on sort of awakening to her sexuality. This was not something that she had a different language of talking about it than say, a 25-year-old today. And it was just many series of conversations about all of these things.
It seemed like she really, nobody talked about it then. So why should she be talking about it now? Why should it have anything to do with, this is a movie about her being number one in the world, right? This is...
Well, the internalized homophobia, and there's that moment, it's so painful to watch her mother in tears as she's, and it's all of that is in her body, right? And so, and also she accomplished so much, and so and it's there's such a business story also of the professionalization of tennis and it going from something that was just for clubs for people who were and then into an open era. There's so much story there that she was such a part of, and she's kind of part of the reason we're all sitting here today. Us three women, her effect on women in leadership roles, I think it affected all sectors of our economies.
I love how she says champions adjust. Yeah. I want to make sure we have time for other people to ask. Yeah, they're in the back.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what's the other obvious.
Well, there's so many good songs.
The needle drops. Yeah, they were just it was vibes. Yeah. It was vibes. It was all, and it was also just about, trying to, sort of back to what Elizabeth was saying about the wisdom that is from, it's she's an older woman, yet her wisdom is so fresh and raw. So it's reaching across the generations a little bit also. And then her beating, Bobby in Battle of the Sexes is just a punk rock moment. You're going to go there, So that was Bikini Kill. Yeah. So, it's all vibes. We didn't have a formal music supervisor, but it was really fun to play in the edit room. And I should say Josh Pearson, our editor, is deeply musical, as a musician himself. And
yeah, he's done many music docs, and actually this is his first sports doc. And
so he brought a lot of musicality to it.
Yeah, he edited Summer of Soul and my Nina Simone film. And
right, that explains a lot. Anybody else? Structure.
I always love working on a project where there's a book to guide you. And I remember reading the book, and it hitting me that all of the threads of her story come together in 73. I mean, obviously it's Battle of the Sexes, but then to realize like, oh my God, she's top of her career in 72. She's just fought for equal pay. She takes this break and she meets Marilyn, and oh my gosh, the Marilyn story is starting. And then and just realizing that this was a big central point, right? And now that evolved in our conversations. And then once we got into the project, but I think we always knew that was going to be a central part of the film. And then, then I think that it was not until we had started and we're in it, we were realizing, okay, well, there's so much more that happens afterwards. I mean, she has to find resolution within herself, and that was going to be a big part of the arc.
The therapy, when she finds therapy and she talks about it, and it really is like this coming out of the water moment in the film. Like, it's really late, but it's really a beautiful feeling of like, oh, okay, all this pain that's built up, and I think what this film brings that I haven't seen in anything else about her is understanding her on a level that of her actual as a human being who's exhausted, who's carrying this load. I don't think we've ever really seen Billie Jean King in that light before.
That's yeah, that exhaustion, the carrying of the load. Yeah, that was big.
Yeah, and you see her just like when she gets out of tennis.
Like, does that make you a selfish person?
Yeah.
Just like,
I think I'm not selfish enough, motherfucker. Yeah.
The question is about working with Laura Cartman, our brilliant composer, who's a star. I mean, Laura, the combination of Laura and Josh, is incredible, because Josh is already, our editor is playing with all kinds of amazing temp music or from, scores of films that we've worked on. And then Laura would just like run with some of those ideas. And then we talk about what wasn't working in the temp, what was working in the temp. And then she would just, improve on it. I mean, one of the moments that I think was so sublime that, she just exceeded every expectation was this moment, when Billie wins the Battle of the Sexes, and she's just so in her head, and she's like all those years of practice and knowledge and like the sort of, and she's being kind of inundated by the crowd, and like Laura, the theme there that it's like it just blossoms. I mean, we're only halfway through the film, but like it's just like, I mean, she's amazing, and there are so many different registers, and there's like a jazzy register for Alana, and there's just all these different themes, but it wasn't so like particular, like, okay, here's an Alana theme and here's Mally, because it was just much more emotional and responsive than that, actually. But she's amazing.
It was really funny how I was just thinking about how every 20 minutes or so we'd hear, and I still got to figure out how to divorce Larry.
Well,
I've still got to divorce Larry.
In the film for a while, and I, whenever I say this in a Q&A, I'm like, how is it not in the film? But like, I say to her in an California had no fault divorce in 73 when she first, and that was news to her when I told her that on camera. When I told her that, like, she did not actually know at that time that she had the right to divorce him without his permission. I mean, she talks about the complications of it, of course. They're best friends, they're partners, all the different things. She does love him. But there was a sense that a woman could not get a divorce without the husband signing off. But in fact, in California at that time, she could have.
I mean, it feels though in this film to me that she can't.
She can't.
She
couldn't.
Does.
She couldn't. Yeah.
Right. Like they're building so many things together, and he's still like the hug that you put in.
He's the beard.
She wins.
He's a beard. I mean, he's her beard, right?
The hug that is real. Like it's like, oh my God, she's their family.
1,000%. But also,
he's the beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are all those foundations thriving still? Everything that she started, is that all happening?
Thriving.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear
so great in 2026. Great. No, it's all happening. Yes, she's a powerhouse.
She's got a new sneaker coming out.
She's got a sneaker coming out.
She's got Billie Jean King Blue. She had the first
an Adidas sneaker.
Colored sneakers, is that right? Or what? What?
So yeah, we
Told me
just
this?
learned this story from her actually, that we say it in the film that she's the first woman athlete to have a shoe, but she was also the first athlete to have a shoe that was a colorful shoe. And she went to Adidas and said, sports is on television and TV is color now. Like, I need some color on my feet. And they're like, okay, yeah. And so they're actually coming out with the same color blue Adidas shoe that you see in the advertisement in the film.
And speaking of coming out, this film is coming out November 12th.
22.
22. Just in time for Thanksgiving.
Which is also Billie's 84th birthday.
Which is also Billie's 84th birthday.
Which will soon be a national holiday.
I mean, do you realize how lucky you are to see it now, here in May? Yeah, May.
Yeah,
You've got months to talk about it. Be like, I'm sorry you can't see it yet. It's great. It's wonderful. Congratulations, both of you. And if you have any other questions, they'll be walking out of the lobby. So congratulations to both of you. Thank you for coming from New York to be with us here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America